Sans plus attendre tout de suite, je demande à nos invités de me rejoindre. Donc nous serons aujourd'hui 4 invités et on va essayer de gagner un petit peu de temps sur le planning vu que vous en avez perdu pas mal ce matin. Let's begin directly with the time. So it's in English. You can look for the translation online. No, I'm joking. It's directly English. So I'm Laurent, the founder of the Paris Fintech Forum. I think I've seen some of you in my events. And I have the chance today to have with us many people working on fintech all around the world. And it's quite interesting today with what happened in the world to have your opinion on fintech on your diverse geographies. So we welcome today Dr. Segun Aina from Africa Fintech Network. Don Ginsel, European Digital Finance Association, that many of you can know also from a long time ago. I think we began together with Holland Fintech at the time. Jim Smith, Fintech Sandbox. I have to make a disclosure. I love this guy. He was always the first man to buy a ticket on my platform every year. Every year, when from Paris Fintech Forum since 2015, you never missed one. And Diego Perez from Fintech IberoAmérica. So I think we begin quite fast, perhaps with 1 minute each to present who you are and what you present as an ecosystem. So perhaps let's begin with you, Segun. And I'm launching the timer because no timer.
Okay, good day, everyone. My name is Segun Aina. The background in banking, 30 years, including 6 years as CEO of a bank before I went into the fintech space, setting up the Fintech Association of Nigeria in 2017, and in 2018 spearhead with others the setting up of Africa Fintech Network. Africa Fintech Network is a network of national fintech associations of African countries. Africa is a continent of 54 countries. We started with about 5 countries at inception. Today, through the effort of the Africa Fintech Network, we have national fintech associations in 42 out of the 54 countries in Africa, and our aim is to get up to 50 by the end of next year. And that has led to a lot of growth in terms of the fintech space, in terms of the number of unicorns that have been produced, in terms of the investment that have come into Africa, and that position Africa as the continent with the highest rate of return for fintech investment. Thank you.
Thank you for keeping the time. Your turn, Jim.
Good afternoon. I'm Jim Smith. I'm here on behalf of Fintech Sandbox, which is a nonprofit organization based in Boston that makes data available for free to early stage startups. Historically, the majority have been in the US, but we also have helped accelerate startups in all of these different regions, in addition to Canada, and the US. We've had about 400 companies go through the program and been at it for 10 years.
Please.
Oh, thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Diego Perez. I came all the way down from Brazil, 11 hours flight to get here. So currently I'm the president of the Fintech Association of Brazil, but also I'm vice president of the Fintech IberoAmérica, which is the alliance of fintech associations from Latin. We comprise a group of around 3,000 fintechs in Latin America, and I'm very happy to share the information that I have from Brazil and Latin to the audience here. Thank you for the invitation.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Don Ginsel. I'm currently the president of the European Digital Finance Association, which is a federation of national associations similar to my colleagues here beside me. We try to unite Europe, currently covering 18 countries and over 2,000 fintech companies that we represent. We especially like to support them with their connections on Brussels level, where, of course, increasingly financial regulation comes from, and try to help create a single market within Europe for fintech companies.
Thank you very much. So when I began in this industry of cooperation and finance event more than 10 years ago, in France, no one believed in an English-spoken event. You remember when you came, I had to pay for translators. And we did only that, only international. I can tell you, you are very lucky to be in this room, and you should catch up with these guys after. Because the best way to innovate is to learn with others and from others. Travel, take a flight ticket. Okay, it's not good for ecology, but it's
crossing borders is always rewarding.
Yeah, and it's very important if you create a fintech, try to have foreigners in your board, not only working with your own blood. Sorry for my accent, French. I have the same question for all of you. So we'll do a first round. First, and I have another question after that. The first one is situation of fintech in your different ecosystem. In a nutshell, we've been through like a roller coaster for the last 10 years. I remember when some big names on my stage, like CEO of Ingenico or whatever, were saying that this fintech were mosquitoes, who cares? And then later on, we've seen many of our friends calling us in the morning saying they are billionaires. Speaking of 20 and 21, you know, and Nasdaq quotation, and suddenly no more money in the market and difficulties. I'm speaking mainly of Europe here and North America. And in developing country at the same time, we've seen different passes. So let's see where we are today in your geographies. Don, perhaps closer to me.
Yeah, of course. So I think fintech has been through quite a cycle with indeed what you're saying, the initial excitement, or first the ignorance around 2013 and 14 when nobody thought it was interesting. Then there was the big fear of they're going to kick our ass in the traditional industry. Afterwards followed by the idea of collaboration and of course the crazy valuation and money time around COVID when everybody was getting crazy valuations and money was thrown away for free. And afterwards, we got a bit of a dip with raising interest rates, lowering valuations, and also increasingly bankruptcies and sort of closing of firms or mandatory M&A.
First question, sorry. So this is what we've seen in France, of course, exactly the story. You have 18 countries in your association?
Yeah.
Do you see exactly the same story everywhere?
No, so you see it has different paces. So you see that Eastern Europe actually is much more building still on some excitement around fintech, where I think in Western Europe there's a bit of fatigue and much more focus on compliance in the industry, which makes it much more difficult for fintech companies to currently start. It's just too much legislation to actually be able to have an easy start. So much more entrepreneurs would rather start just outside of fintech in a non-regulated area rather than inside, because the paperwork just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, because if I may, in Europe, when we began, it was a gray area. You could launch anything. People were just looking from far.
Yeah.
It was fun. But today, the regulator is here the day you begin. So it's a bit more complex. Is that?
You begin as a banker already. So it's hard to actually bring in a different culture and a different approach, really have a startup mentality, because you're reeled in by the regulators to just comply and act like a bank.
And one question regards to that, do you see exactly the same pace on verticals? Meaning, what are the business which today you see still growing in Europe, or is a good timing? Only RegTech or something else?
No, so RegTech is definitely an important one, but of course you see new areas come up where, well, generally management of data is quite a big topic. And we see some interesting projects that are trying to unite Europe at different levels with regards to either payments, wealth management, that are still pretty much on the rise. But it's not so crazy anymore with, for example, the money that was thrown to neobanks a couple of years ago with crazy valuations for, you know, a Revolut, Bank, Klarna, which were explosively growing because the money was free. Now you see everything becomes a bit more modest because, you know, you actually have to pay, you have to give a return on money.
And still in Europe, before we shift of geographies, you just mentioned payment. Payment is not a bit too late to enter that space, no? I mean...
So I'm not talking about actually startup, right? This is more about existing initiatives coming together to create more European scale. And I think that makes it interesting to at least that there are opportunities and at least also support from the regulators to create a single European market, and which I think could be really beneficial for fintech companies to actually have a European scale. So we actually get European payment methods. Already just yesterday with lunch, you know, someone picked up the bill with 10 people and we were figuring out how do we split this bill, because someone has Wero, someone has a Revolut, someone else has Bank, someone else has a PayPal. How do we fix it?
Don't laugh at us. Let's first not take a flight. So I go to Africa first, like as I can find a path with a train. So Segun, same question for you. Can you tell us a bit the situation of fintech today in Africa?
Yes, fintech has had a lot of growth and improvement in Africa compared to what we had 10 years ago when fintech was really not in vogue. To the extent that today we have in Africa not less than 8 fintech unicorns that were, you know, that came about in the last few years. We've had in Africa over $40 billion investment, cumulative investment in the last 7 or 8 years. And the regulatory environment has also improved to the extent that most regulators now have fintech departments, their regulatory, which has helped a lot, because some of the pain points that we have in Africa fintech, initially it was funding, but funding is now, is now resolved, even though the funding is coming a lot more from outside of Africa. There's now working on increasing local funding. We also have a problem with regulation, which is the main pain point today. But with the dynamism of the regulators, we are now seeing a lot of more friendly regulations that help and support the growth of fintech. And we know that in the next few years to come, there will probably be a lot of more bigger fintech unicorn coming out of Africa. The focus has always been in payment. As you see in many other countries, about 70% of fintechs are in payment, but we're now seeing a lot of them now going to other areas, digital lending. We have a lot of fintechs that want to have opportunity to take deposits. Because of that, they now go for microfinance banking license, because the capital requirement there is low. They go for microfinance banking license so that they can also take customer deposits and deploy it to be able to meet up with the services that they offer. Africa is 54 countries, so just like in Europe, they are all different, at different stages of growth. The most advanced will be the Southern Africa. When I say Southern Africa, about 6 countries that make up Southern Africa: South Africa, Zimbabwe, and so on and so forth. Then followed by West Africa. Even West Africa is divided into 2 components: the Francophone-speaking countries, with Nigeria as the biggest, the largest in Africa with 220 million, and then we have about 10 French-speaking countries, in West Africa. Kenya and East Africa. I mean, I'm sure all of us here know M-Pesa, which was the first fintech to be globally recognized. It came out of Kenya. So Kenya and East Africa, which include Tanzania, Rwanda, Ethiopia, and so on and so forth, are also fast becoming, fintech hub. And in recent times, North Africa, particularly Morocco and Egypt. In fact, Egypt itself has produced 2 unicorns, Fauri and MTN, Haaland. And we are seeing a lot of things also happening in Algeria. So the role of Africa FinTech Network is to, number one, support the creation of fintech associations in.
If you answer all my questions at once, we'll come back to your role later. But I still have one question. You mentioned some of unicorns. Some of them were created by foreigners, from French in French-speaking countries, or many UK people also, and Netherlands come there. Are we at the time where you see growing African fintech built by African native people, or it's still the time for UK, French to send their startup guys?
In fact, most of the unicorns we have are built by Africans. Only 2 I could say are built by non-Africans. That is OPay by Chinese and Wave from France. All the other 6 unicorns are built by Africa. But
M-Pesa was
M-Pesa is Africa, Safaricom. But the funding came from outside of Africa. So the ownership of these companies are outside of Africa, mostly, Silicon Valley, Y Combinator guys. But there's now a clamor for indigenous funding, local funding, because of so many reasons, including currency fluctuation, because you can't have capital in US dollars and you are making money in local currency in a high, inflationary environment. So that creates a lot of problems. So a lot of governments in particular are now providing patient capital to be able to create, opportunity for investment in local currency that will help the growth of fintechs.
And before I jump into North America, one last question. We spoke about a lot in Europe about another economic subject, about the Chinese power growing in Africa. Do you have special bound in fintech? Do you see in some of the 40 countries you oversee some fintech creation pushed by Chinese presence and Chinese economic development there?
Yes, indeed. I mean, I mentioned OPay. OPay is a company and product created in China, but now doing a lot of business in Africa. And in fact, it reached unicorn, the fastest to reach unicorn. It was founded in 2018 or so, and within 3 years, it attained unicorn status, and that tells you the opportunity that we have in Africa. Chinese fintech in Africa, Chinese interest in fintech in Africa is not as pervasive as many others. They are more involved in other areas, but particularly Huawei, that is involved in supporting, promoting some other non-fintech products and so on. So we haven't seen a lot of Chinese influence, in the fintech space in Africa.
Perhaps later. Jim, let's fly to North America. I mean, we are so used to listen your president every morning to have a good laugh. Can you perhaps tell us what is the situation today in the States? Is it similar to Europe where everything has been done already, or tell us?
It's certainly not true that everything has been done already. I think the word of the day, though, is uncertainty. We've seen that it's become harder to find financing, particularly in fintech. Anecdotally, you can raise a seed round, a pre-seed round, that's still happening, but the A, the B, the C, the hurdles that you have to clear are higher, and it takes longer. So you have to have a longer runway in order to get that round. And on the VC side, there's an overhang. There are a lot of companies out there that raised at unrealistic valuations during COVID and don't want to take that down round. There, until last week, haven't been IPOs. And so money's not being returned to LPs, and they in turn are not funding new firms or new funds. So that's all kind of coagulated in a way. Also, there's a lot of regulatory uncertainty going on. We thought we had open banking, but that was a regulation that was approved. But now it's uncertain. It's unclear whether open banking is happening in the U.S. and
Why? What happened?
Well, the Consumer Finance Protection Bureau, which promulgated that rule, it's unclear how what the state of that organization is, who's running it, who's still there. They have decided not to pursue certain regulatory issues that they were pursuing previously. They have cut back on other regulations.
But is it because of lobbying that people were pushing before the new administration, and now they managed to get it, or is it just because it's a mess?
Yeah, I think there certainly was some lobbying going on before and after the election, but I also think that just a philosophical change, a very big philosophical change when it comes to regulation and protecting consumers has happened. Uncertainty is not good.
What's the change exactly? What's the spirit of the change? What do you mean when you say there is a big change in the philosophy?
We are enforcing regulations less enthusiastically, let's say. But I want to say that uncertainty is bad for business. Business people like to know how they're going to be regulated. They like to know the lay of the land before they make an investment. This type of uncertainty makes it harder for VCs to write checks. Certainly makes it harder for angel investors to write checks if they see that they were worth 25 million euros this morning, and then tariffs were imposed, and now they're worth 20 million euros. They don't feel like they can afford to write that check. The other thing that happens is when you have a lot of uncertainty, businesses can't plan. They might have said, we're going to invest in this program this year, and we're going to give this startup this amount of money. But now they're not sure. They're not sure what the economic outlook is, and that's not going to happen.
But in many discussions around here, people were saying on the opposite that, okay, if we don't like Trump for politics, but for fintech, look what he did for example, crypto industry, that's good for them compared to what we have here.
Crypto is different. The crypto folks have gotten what they were hoping for. So
they paid for.
Yes. Yeah, that is true. But other folks, not so much.
Okay, perhaps because some other people paid. We don't know.
I want to mention. You mentioned payment. You mentioned payments. You mentioned payments. Mm-hmm. I actually see a lot of innovation still going on in the U.S. in payments, trying to make real-time payments where maybe we were behind some other countries in the world. People are still working on that. And we also see payments as embedded fintech in vertical SaaS applications, and that is still ongoing and growing. So at least from my standpoint, there's a lot of payments innovation still to come.
Okay.
You still pay higher interchange fees as well, right?
They are still there, yes.
That sometimes can pay innovation too. I mean, that's the goal. Okay, so let's take a flight another time from Boston to Brazil. Same question.
Well, in Brazil, the word that I can bring here is inclusion. Okay, the past 5 to 10 years, we could bring 60 million people to the financial services because they didn't even have the basic access to financial services. Not only in Brazil, but also in Latin America. It's also a reality in other countries, like in Mexico. Half of the population transacts daily with cash. They don't have access to a digital wallet or even a basic bank account. But now, especially in Brazil, due to the fast payment system that we have there, the PIX, it's a huge success. Basically, 70% of the Brazilian population use it daily. If you consider only the adult population, it's like 90% using it. So it was a huge success, and it has less than 5 years working flawlessly in Brazil. And now we are moving to connect with other platforms like the open finance. In Brazil, we could surpass the phase of the open banking, which is the way to open the system to make the data more available for end users. But now we have a platform that you can transact on top of that. So you can initiate payments, you can organize investments, you can have access to products through this platform. And we have now 50 million Brazilians giving access, giving consent to open their data through this system in Brazil. And also, the Brazilian Central Bank are starting to launch the tokenization of assets public platform, which will operate similarly to a CBDC platform, where you can tokenize Brazilian treasury bonds or another kind of securities issued by Brazilian companies to create and to automate investments products or international foreign transactions through this platform when the Brazilian currency is the main currency that you have to transact over there. And also now we are trying to create more competition to this market. In Brazil, we have only 5 banks holding 80 to 90% of the financial services. Due to the fintechs, we could dilute in 10%, but there's a lot of room to grow in this space, and we are trying to put extra effort to open space for newcomers, challengers, and other small startups that can become unicorns like Nubank, Stone, and Mercado Pago, which is a major one from Argentina as well. So we are in a very vibrant moment because everything's happening down there. We have a lot of opportunities. The Brazilians and the Latin Americans, they are very connected. We have a widespread mobile infrastructure. And also in Brazil in particular, we have more mobile phones than people. It's like, it's very common to see a Uber driver with 3 phones, So the Brazilian population is very well connected. So it's very easy to start an operation, to start a platform, to roll out an application, an app, focus on financial services in Brazil as well. The Brazilians are very curious to understand what is happening, what is this innovation that is trying to be applied there. So there's a lot of opportunities down there.
In less than 2 minutes, you mentioned all the good keywords, open banking, CBDC, and so on. It seems like you are filling the gap because 10 years ago was not like that in Brazil. Simple question. Was the success on the rise, a very quick success of Nubank, like the detonator to make all that happen?
Yeah, as I mentioned, the Brazilian financial market is very concentrated. So it's back in 10 years ago, it wasn't easy to open a bank account, especially if you are a foreigner. The founder of Nubank is not from Brazil. He's a Colombian guy, but he was working in Brazil, and he struggled a lot to open a bank account. So he decided to start a company to make things easier, to give a good experience, a better experience for financial services users. So I believe it's the simple things. It's the basic things that you need to improve to bring more people to your services. Nubank, they have more than 100 million users only in Brazil. It's half of the population because Brazil is 200 millions.
I remind to everybody that we love Revolut, but Revolut is 50 million, and it's crazy the pace of growth of Nubank. For those, I'm sure you know it, but it was
And
crazy.
Revolut is also in Brazil now. They started operations back to 2 years ago as a test mode, and now they are trying to push hard to bring more people to the service and investing a lot of money over there. But they need to compete with big ones like Nubank and other local companies that offer the same services. But there's a lot of opportunities. The market in Brazil is very friendly for this kind of competition.
Another question is that we see in Europe, for example, but I'm sure it's the same in the States, that finance and politics are integrated. So, I mean, if I'm a UK guy and I want to become a unicorn in France with my UK team, it's not as easy as if I am a French guy, did the same school as others. But you mentioned the case of David, who comes from Colombia and built his fintech in Brazil, not in Colombia. And I met many Brazilian unicorn and fintech. It's not the only case. How do you explain that? Because people in South America moves a lot from one country to another. I mean, is it a fluid market or?
Yeah, maybe that as well, but Brazil is half of the market if you consider Latin. You know.
So if you do Brazil, you do South America.
Yes. If you conquer Brazil, you conquer half of the Latin American market. So it's more convenient for international entrepreneurs if they have a mission to put a service in Latin America. If you start in Brazil and you are successful, you could reach the 50%
And
of the
how is it?
market.
I mean, from far away, politics doesn't seem always so stable in South America. I don't know if inside you have the same feeling, but
Yeah, it's not that stable, but it's not something that is happening by now. It's
you are used to, you mean?
Yeah, we are used to this kind of situations. But
But I'm speaking more about the impact on fintechs. For example, I've just read a few weeks ago that there is a project where perhaps what is doing Edenred will become useless in Brazil because it will be embedded in the economic system.
Well, in Brazil, the fintech scenario is more apolitical, because there's a lot of benefits involved, and also the right side or the left side, they want to take advantage of those benefits. And the PIX was initially planned by the Dilma government, which is more focused on left agenda. And then after it was implemented by Bolsonaro government, which is more right agenda. But both of the governments work together to put this in place. So it's something that sometimes connect both sides, and put the stability apart and try to make something more great for the country.
Just for people who don't read every morning the Herald Tribune about South America, can you remind us inflation rate in Argentina or in Brazil? Just because we speak a lot here about rates and the difficulties to run a fintech business with rate going from 0 to 3, very unstable. What is your stability mode?
Well, in Brazil, inflation is not a big problem. It's somehow controlled. It's like 4% a year, 4 to 5% a year. But in Argentina, it's a very big problem.
It's what
It's
today?
more than 100% a year.
Yeah. And you still manage to have fintech in Argentina.
Yeah, they are struggling a lot. But the current government are trying to solve this problem, and they're doing a great job so far.
Yeah, it was before 160% a year. So.
Yes. But the problem in Brazil is the high interest rates that we have. So the cost to fundraise in Brazil is very high. The investors, they prefer to keep the money in the bank.
What is the interest rate today in
It's
Brazil?
14.7. But it's almost 15. It's crazy. It's a lot of.
And it's still very difficult to move money from other countries to Brazil, and still very controlled. And
No.
It's better?
It's easy to move money.
time it was one big deal.
Yeah, no, at the past it was crazy. But now we have a very modern legal and regulatory framework to move money from and to Brazil. And some companies have created new products focused on that because of these new frameworks that we have in place there. But it's not the control anymore.
Done. 18 countries, perhaps more later in your association. What are the needs of your members today? I'm assuming it's fragmented, but what are the key needs today?
So there's a couple of things. I think, of course, very often we talk about the fragmented European regulatory landscape, which I think, fortunately, also the European Commission and the regulators are trying to fix as well, but are still being pushed back by national competent authorities. So I think there the difference country by country is still one of the biggest challenges. But it's also about financial culture, right? So if you talk about cash, for example, if you go in Germany, they still love cash. But if you go to the Nordics or to Poland, for example, you would see that people actually don't use cash anymore at all. And so you get really different types of financial habits, which I think creates different needs for solutions. So that makes the market fragmented as well. And of course, it's still very hard sometimes for solutions from one country to be used in another country because they just don't work. And I think that's where I think
we still don't have European finance market.
It's not still one market. No, so I think this is one. And I see.
But do you believe when we hear Ursula von der Leyen saying that she wants a European financial market, but I have the impression it's 20 years we say that. From where your point of view, do you think perhaps it's coming due to pressure from US, from China, from Russia?
So indeed, I think the current global climate is pushing Europe closer together. So I think the momentum is now, and we can actually use this momentum to push this further. And I think also now there's a call out currently by the European Commission about the Savings and Investment Union, which is an important call for also parties. So I definitely also would call upon you all, if you are in that space, in savings or in investments within Europe, to respond to this call. We're going to do that, of course, from the European Digital Finance Association perspective, and spur all the national associations to respond, but also individual companies can do that. And the European Commission keeps on asking us as well for concrete cases on things that do not work, right? So I think that's a really important one, that we keep on bringing these cases to them to show them what really works, what it works like in real life, because they very often just can't see what barriers people encounter when they try to offer financial services.
I think many people underestimate how it is important to answer those calls because the European Commission read it and they need your feedback. So work with your association or answer with your companies, but that's really important because the others answer. Yeah. So if you want to be part of the game, take time to do that. Jim, from your point of view, what is more difficult in Europe when you know fintech from US wanted to come to Europe? Is it the language or the many regulations?
I'm going to say it's probably the language, the plethora of languages that you have to translate and work in, rather than the regulations. People may not realize that there's a lot of fragmentation of regulation in the US. We've got 50 states, and if you're doing money transfer, you need a license in 50 states. If you're in insurance, well, you've got 50 insurance regulators.
It's the same as us.
So it is very similar, though I would say, and if you're B2C, I think it would be very hard to come to the US. But if you're B2B and you're coming from Europe to the US, I think you have to come to the US because it's such a big market. And the regulations there are not going to be the same. You're not going to have the same issues.
But asking the other way around, because we've seen many Europeans trying to go to US, but also many American companies trying to sell in Europe. Let's speak about the big word, AI. I don't know if AI is working really in everything, but at least for translation and helping to do many communication B2C easily, do you think we'll see more fintech company from US able to address our very specific market of 27 language countries thanks to that?
It might help. I'm not sure. I haven't seen anything that would say it has solved that particular issue. But I will say AI, it's been around. We've been using it in financial services for more than a decade, so it's not really as new as maybe it seems to some folks. But everybody is looking at it. Everybody says they're using it. At Fintech Sandbox, I looked back over the last year and a half, and almost every startup that we've accepted says they're using AI. take that with a grain of salt. There's AI washing that goes on, but a lot of them are using it, and a lot of them will find an impact for it. I think it's exciting, and I think agentic AI is very interesting. I'm not seeing anybody actually using it, but I would love to see somebody come up with an AI agent that takes fiduciary responsibility, that works only for me and makes decisions only for my benefit, not for the bank or the insurance company or the middleman or the software firm. That's very exciting, very potentially disruptive if you're an established financial services company. I'll say I think identity is the first thing that has to be cracked. You can look at my, if I'm opening a bank account, you can look at my face and say, yeah, he's real, he's not, a deep fake. But what if it's my AI agent that's going to your API that is saying, I want to start a bank account for Jim, and here's what I'm authorized to do. How is a bank gonna authenticate that? And I don't think we know, and I think it's a very exciting.
You are so lazy. You want an agent AI to open your bank account. Segun, first, it was not the point, but is there the same big thing about AI in fintech in Africa, or it's not the buzzword today? I have no clue, so I'm asking.
No, it's actually becoming a buzzword, and every country is coming up with AI strategy, national artificial intelligence strategy, and we have a lot of fintech actually using AI to be able to deliver their services, and that is making the job easier and much more efficient. And I agree with you, the language barrier, because in Africa too, there's also language barrier. The Lusophone country that's Portuguese speaking, Francophone English speaking, Francophone French speaking, and Anglo. So the language barrier is also there in Africa. That we believe that AI will be able to help a lot in simplifying, the language challenge.
And keep the mic. Question about Africa. What do your members in 40 plus countries are the most in need today? I mean, like two things, they need that, and we try to help for that.
Yeah, I'll give you three things.
Yes, two, you give me three, okay.
The first one is what I hear happen in other countries in terms of business passporting, licensing passporting. Africa, 54 countries, 41 regulators. So if you want to move from one country to the other, you have to start all over again, starting to meet, and the regulations are different. What is allowed in country A may not be allowed in country B. So that's a major challenge, because the fintech companies are now getting more matured, and they're now moving out of their primary market and going to other markets. So what we are doing in the Africa Fintech Network is we are working with regulators and continental associations like the African Union to be able to form a working group that will simplify and standardize, fintech licensing passporting, so that once you are in a country and you meet with the agreed criteria, it becomes easy for you to operate in other countries. So that's a project that we are working on now. The second one is information about Africa. A lot of people don't know what's going on in Africa, especially in Africa fintech. They don't know about the opportunity that exists in the African market. So working with African Development Bank, that is a continental development bank, that they are funding a grant for us to create the Africa Fintech platform, which should be a one-point source for information about Africa Fintech, for investors who are interested, for people who are interested in even hiring talents, for investors anywhere in Africa. I was speaking to a friend in the UK. How do you decide where you go in Africa? And you say, well, they have to hire KPMG or whatever to do the job for them. Once this platform is there, on the touch of your computer, you know what's going on, and it makes it easy for everyone. The last one is the abundant talent that exists in Africa. Africa, 1.3 billion people, over 60%, under 30 years. So it's an abundant supplier of talent. So the challenge that local fintech operators have is how to get the skilled talent to be able to help, in doing that. Which at the end of the day, also help Africa, because we are net exporters of talents to other parts of the world. So those are three areas that I think are major challenges that we are addressing in the Africa Fintech Network.
Thank you. If we want to have a chance to have something to eat, we need to close in 2 minutes. So perhaps now I ask you if one of you have a question for the others, or ask you your questions.
Well, my question is, I mean, like I said earlier on, is how do we all work together? This is around the world. Around the world, similar challenges, unique opportunities, and so on and so forth. We need to create this. How do we work together? I'm on the board of the Global Fintech Alliance, which was just formed about a year ago, to bring everybody together. But there's still the question of how do we ensure that it benefits everybody? I don't know whether anybody here would
Any opinion? Oh, you can work together, Jim.
Well, I would say the Fintech Sandbox would love to have startups from each of your continents come to us, approach us, see if we've got data that will help them build a product, get into market, do a proof of concept. That's what we're here for.
Yeah, I think it's important to keep the cooperation going on because each region has its particularities, your own nuances. And for instance, in Brazil, buy now, pay later is not something new. We have this for 20 years, I would say. It's very usual to pay everything in installments in Brazil. But if you want to start operation of a buy now, pay later service in Brazil, you will struggle. It's not something new. So it's important to keep this interaction, to exchange information, and what is the good and the best scenario for each sector in each region.
Don, you were the first to speak. You'll be the last. So, 20
Well,
seconds.
thank you, Laurent. No, so I think it's. I think there's a lot of opportunities to collaborate. We already explored a little bit, of course, in advance, and there's a lot of opportunity, I think, to explore, especially if you see that there's cultures, languages are similar. That's where we already can help each members bridge gaps quite easily and explore each other's markets. But for the rest, I think there's still parts of the world that are not so well organized yet or don't have representation, where we could actually share experiences on, how our associations build up, what kind of governance do they use, and how do they build relationships with the institutions. I think that experience, in any case, is something that we share, because also within Europe there are still countries without a fintech association, for example, and we're helping them set that up. But that's also good to do that on a global level, I think. So there's plenty of opportunities there. And just come to each other's parties, right? Just like now here in Paris. So great to see you here.
Thank you. It was a pleasure to have you.